Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen.
And I'm John Johnson.
And you're listening to Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, comics we want to read, and everything in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Planes, Trains, and Comic Books. This week we got a fun tale.
A jolly old romp.
Yeah. Here, whatever you
Bully.
call them. Yeah, bully. We're doing The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Volume 1, by Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill. And this story is set in jolly old England in 1898. So right on that precipice of it's like the Industrial Revolution's kind of happening, but it's on the precipice before it's really taken off.
Yeah, before it really escalates.
This book was written in 1999. And that is pretty apparent because this book couldn't really get written nowadays, I don't think. At least
you don't say.
At least released by DC, because it was written under, I think it was from Wildstorm or Vertigo, one of those two. Like an imprint under DC for more adult audiences. Alan Moore doesn't really pull any punches. He writes how he wants to write. He's, I think last time we mentioned him because he was kind of the original sketch of Spider Jerusalem, where he looked all crazy, was like what Alan Moore actually looks like, where he's got a big beard and all that. So, but yeah,
he's the original Bad Boy comics.
I mean, kind of. He just does what he wants, and then his writing is so good that even if you're not the same politics, you're the same whatever, you're just yeah, I'm on board with this. So, this was actually more of his literary writing style.
Yeah, I was gonna say we talked about that a little bit before when we were talking about Watchmen and stuff. It's even if you don't 100% agree with the politics of that book, it's just so beautifully written and illustrated,
right?
That you're this is amazing. But in this book, it's very much just more time centric and literary centric of what is going on in that time. So that's not really there's not really a politics into that side of it. Yeah,
it's just a fun story.
Yeah. I mean, there's things that, again, looking at it now, definitely could not be done. But
yeah,
that's more of a, Me Too or political correctness or just being more compassionate and understanding,
I guess,
of people.
I don't know. It definitely sets the time. You could tell. So in this, I mean, there's definitely racism towards different cultures and sexism towards women, but it's weird because it's like he knows it, he's yeah, this was horrible, but also wasn't Britain kind of awesome, but also it was horrible, but also wasn't it kind of awesome? There was some because he uses so we'll say the premise for this book is basically what if the characters from your favorite properties that are not copywritten anymore from British, books were real and part of a super team kind of thing, where England's we need you, Dr. Jekyll, and we need you, Alan Quartermain, who I didn't know about until this, this, and then just people like that are we need you, Nemo from 2000 Leagues Under the Sea. So it's kind of him celebrating the fun and adventure of that time, also knowing that colonialism is horrible.
Yeah.
But he also has elements in the story that if it was set in 1980 or 1898 would make sense for them being there. There's a lot of racism towards Asian people and other people. I think they go to Morocco or something where they find Alan Quartermain and there's opium dens everywhere, and all these people just want to, it's a bazaar, and they want to rape Wilhelmina and stuff. So we'll get into exactly everything going on, but it's definitely something that I don't know if could be written nowadays. Maybe it could because it's Alan Moore, and people are so reverent of him, he can kind of write whatever he wants.
Alan Moore today could probably still write whatever,
but not from DC.
Wants.
I think he could publish it
from
Fantagraphics or whatever, but not under DC, I don't think.
But I'm not gonna go and write a brand new book as just myself out of nowhere and write something like this.
No, yeah.
Because people be who is this asshole?
Yeah, but he was doing that shit. I mean, if you read Watchmen, you're what? There's a lot of stuff in that book.
Yeah.
and they're all alluding to characters that are in the DC lore, and you're like, wow, some of these people are horrible. So yeah, well, we'll get into it, but
so the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen,
the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen,
and one woman,
and a lady, and so the book starts off. There's this gentleman named Mr. Bond, who I found out later after researching this is supposed to be James Bond's grandpa. He works for MI5, and which is the Secret Service or Special Secret Service or whatever of England, and he has, I guess, got Wilhelmina Murray, they're calling her. You might know her as Mina Harker from Dracula. She's Keanu Reeves' wife. In that fantastic,
you went right there.
In that fantastic 1990s movie Dracula with Monica Bellucci and other people.
So she's Winona Ryder in this.
Yeah, she's Winona Ryder. Yeah, just picture her as that would have been kind of awesome if they had cast her in that movie. This was also the reason why we chose this book this week is because we watched the movie last weekend.
We're like, hey, we remember this being like...
No. I was like, this is garbage. And you were like, I thought it was fun.
I remember it being fun as a kid. Let's check it out.
I was like, no, this is garbage. And I fell asleep through some of it, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
No, I could definitely... There was a lot of slower parts, and there was some rough CG for now.
Well,
nowadays,
that is... I don't blame CG from back in the day, but... it was definitely like we took these characters and wrote kind of a similar plot, but also we have to make this a movie for America. So like we're going to add Tom Sawyer and we're going to add Dorian Gray and, and some more action than normal in this book than was in the comic and stuff. Anyway, Wilhelmina, or we'll call her Mina, is recruited by Bond into becoming a part of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And what it is, they just say like, we need it for England because stuff's happening in England and it's going to be chaos.
His proprietor, Mr. M, who he works for, is hiring so they can form the society to protect England, and it's not its interest, but protect England in like
and its colonies
and the world as it
which was at the time
England.
So and then we see like a big boat pop up, and it's the Nautilus. It's Captain Nemo, who, I mean, we both agree is pretty much the most badass character in this.
Yeah.
And I think, I haven't read future volumes of this because this is volume 1. I've read volume 2, which came out pretty consecutively with the first volume. Then there was like 5 years or 6 years. Then there was a volume 3, and then there was one called Black Dossier then, and then now I think volume 3 came out recently. He's actually continuing writing this stuff.
Oh,
so
cool.
Yeah, and I know that there's like a separate series called Nemo. And some other, so it's like, I want to kind of read that one because it's kind of cool. And it's same artist and everything. I should also say the art in this is really cool. Like Kevin O'Neill has a very I'll say it's like a delicate style. Like all of his characters look different. He's got a lot of kind of like Bernie Wrightson cross hatching and stuff for shadows and whatnot, but it's very delicate lines. Very British, like. But yeah, he fit the style of this book really well. Like,
well, it's cool. Like you're saying, like it is really pretty, and the character design. Every character is super unique in their design.
Oh yeah.
So like, there's no like we'll go back to Parker, where like you get into some areas, you're like they all wear suits and top hats, so we kind of lost track of them. Like everybody in this has a very specific design, look, and feel to them, and like they all stand out from each other. And there's some characters that like come off as a little bigger than life, obviously,
right,
but like it fits, it works, it looks really nice.
Yeah, and it doesn't look too crazy, but it just looks really good. And then so we got Mina, and she's with Nemo, and they're like, okay, like this is for the first 2 of the 5 League of Gentlemen. And
I have to say, sorry, just real fast, their sub is cool because they incorporated the two. If you're not familiar with the story of 2000 Leagues Under Sea and the giant squid that attacks it, they incorporate a giant squid onto the into the mechanics,
into the metal. It's not an organic squid. It's like the metal around the squid. It's like
it looks like a metal squid on incorporate into this gigantic sub, and it's cool, and it comes into play later too. So that was fun.
It's fantastic. I love the design of that Nautilus.
Yeah.
And they call it the Nautilus, so it's supposed to be the same sub as the one in the book.
Yeah.
So we said Nemo's from 2000 Leagues, Mina's from Dracula, and Bond is from James Bond, presumably. And then we don't know who M is, who's Bond's like boss or whatever. And then so they're like, hey, we need you to go get this guy, Alan Quartermain, who everybody already knows in the story. And as Americans, we're like, who the fuck is this? And we're reading it, and like she has to go to like Morocco or somewhere in kind of like the Middle East or North Africa area to get him. And he's in an opium den. And just juxtaposing this from where he was in the movie was like crazy.
Yeah.
We're like, in the movie, he's like, I'm Sean Connery and I'm just drinking scotch and I've kind of just given up that life. And in this, he's like totally hooked on opium and he's like super skinny, like a skeleton.
That's almost. His character, and it's specifically in the art, is one of my favorite things in this book.
Yes.
When they find him to where he like
he's all out of it, buffed out at the end and everything. Yeah. He's got a nice character arc in this. He's all opiumed out, and like she goes into his room, she's looking all around this area, and it's kind of like a bazaar, like a Middle East, like Aladdin. Like Aladdin. Yeah, I was gonna say like Aladdin. And he's like, it'd be like if, when Jasmine's looking around for Aladdin, and she's like, where's that boy? And they're like, get out of here, you street rat or whatever. But like she's looking around, and she's like the only white lady in this area, and they kind of make that known. And then you see like the like evil looks some people give her, and then you see them like just kind of as she goes through the doorway, once she finally figures out where Quartermain is, they're like they appear behind her, and then they start trying to like rape her, and you're like, what the fuck? And then Quartermain's like, I wanna, like, I'll try to help, and then she actually takes care of him and like helps herself because he's a fucking
he shoots one and it gets him, but like that distracts the other, and then she's like and she stabs one of them.
And so like that they have to run out of there, and he's like, I can barely run or whatever. It's like, if I could just have another hit of opium, I'd be fine. And apparently Alan Quartermain is like an Indiana Jones figure-ish from King Solomon's Mine, I think is his best or his most well-known story. So then they bring him on the Nautilus, and he's like, he has to detox, and he's like going crazy in his opium room where they like lock him in this room. There's one shot where he's like freaking out, and he like wakes up in the middle of the night or whatever because he's under the ocean. He doesn't even know what time is, and he's like, and he like looks out the window, and there's like a fish with like one of those like deep sea fish that have like an anglerfish. Yeah, like an anglerfish with a little bulb on its. And he's like, what the fuck? Like, how high am I right now? And he's like freaking out, and they're kind of watching him. I don't know if it's through two-way glass. I assume it is.
Yeah, they said there's like a two-way.
And so then they're like, wow, how far he's fallen. Like, I think I used to read stories about him when I was a kid and all this stuff. And Nemo's just like, he's great in this because he's so like, man, I fucking hate all these kind of people because they like ruin because he's supposed to be Indian in this, and he's like, I hate basically Britain, but also like, and I guess he used to be a pirate and stuff, and so there's like all these stories of him pirating against the colonies in Britain. So he's like a villain to them, but also he's working with them now because I think they'll pardon him, is what, like, they've given him a deal where like, we'll just push everything under the rug if you kind of help us out with some stuff. And so Quartermain detoxes, and he's like, okay, I'm better. And they're like, cool. We need to go to Paris because women are dying there, like a lot of women, and it might be like a Jack the Ripper kind of thing. And so they go there. And this guy's kind of walking him or telling him what's going on in Paris, and there's been all these murders of prostitutes, and it's very like, but I think they've been like torn apart though, not quite as sophisticated or surgical as Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll have Mina dress up like a prostitute and just have her like wait on the corner.
We'll lure him out that way.
Yeah, and she's like, what the fuck? But she's like, I guess I have to for England. for England, you know, and so she puts on like, you know, a bustier or whatever, and whatever they wore back then, and waits on a corner, and
Quartermain and the other guy are watching. They're supposed to be watching, and this is one of the parts I like too. Is Quartermain's watching, and then he sees a pharmacy, and he's like, "I'm just gonna hop in here real fast and grab some medicine."
Yeah, some of Grandpa's old cough medicine.
He comes out with a bottle, and he's like, "Oh crap, where'd she go?"
Yeah, it is like you find out later that it's a bottle of laudanum because so like she disappears and they're like, what the fuck? And then they have to track her down because basically we find out like a giant monster's taking her, and you're like, who is this monster? And that kind of like where the issue 1 kind of ends on.
Yeah.
A monster took her. So then issue 2 picks up right there where like they're trying to track down this monster that has Mina, and you know Quartermain is kind of, I mean, he's not his old self, but he's not quite an opium addict right now either. So
he looks better too at this.
He looks a bit better. And I think like this is actually like time as far as how long things would take. Like it's going fast because it's an issue, but I think there is like months in between. Like how long it would actually take to go to Paris.
Oh yeah, like
or,
it's still,
you know,
it's still said that was one thing I noticed they were specific about. It was like May when you first meet Mina, and then it's like the end June in Cairo, and then I think it's July. Yeah, it's like July-ish when they get to Paris. So like there's definitely like a transition of time.
Yeah, so like so that's it makes more sense that you see him like detoxing, and then the next time you see him, he's like, I'm okay, kind of. You know, I'm still kind of jonesing for something. But, you know, I'm not like totally hooked on drugs anymore. So he's actually capable kind of now. So he's, you know, in his adventure style, he's able to like track down the monster, and they're fighting in like or like he tracks him down. And I like the way they show him. He like bursts through a door and he's like, rah! And it's like basically this giant monster. They take him out. He fights with Quartermain and they fall through the window.
Yeah.
And then he passes out. And he passes out because Quartermain shoves the laudanum down his throat, right? And so
he shoots him first.
Yeah.
And it like grazes the side of his head.
Oh yeah, cuts his ear off, right?
And he's like basically unaffected by it.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
Oh, what did you do that for?
And he's like a big monster, but he can talk. He's like a humanoid, giant, muscly.
He kind of looks like a cross between like an ape and
like a big baboon.
Yeah.
Like a super jacked baboon.
With a suit on.
Yeah, with a suit on, which was kind of cool. I like it.
It reminded me that. Do you remember Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yeah.
There's the gorilla bouncer too.
Oh yeah.
That's what it kind of reminded me of a little. Anyway,
totally. So yeah, like so they're fighting, and then Quartermain like shoves the bottle of laudanum in his mouth, and like makes him drink the whole bottle. And they're like, what? Like no one knew it was laudanum though in the bottle. They just thought, oh, it's like alcohol or something. Laudanum, for all those of you who don't know, is what they used to put people to sleep back in the day for surgeries. So like you could just buy it at a drugstore though. It'd be like if you could go in and be like, I just have some anesthesia, please, and they're like, here you go, take 2 daily for your toothache or whatever, you know, and so you could just buy stuff like that over the counter. So yeah, laudanum was like an opiate based anesthetic back in the day. And so he pours the whole bottle down this monster's mouth, and it passes out. And then they fall through the window when that happens. And then the monster's knocked out. So they bring him on the ship, and he's still the monster. He's still kind of like, what the fuck? And then he turns into a man. And then we find out, oh, this is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So, and this is basically the event, like this is the Hulk Avengers before Avengers.
Yep.
He's very much like I can't get angry or else the monster will come out. You know, it's very much like Bruce Banner in the first Avengers movie. And so, but it's used really well, I thought. You know, I thought there were some parts where like you're like, why would he? Like basically they tell him like, we'll give you a pardon, and Hyde's like, I don't give a shit. And Dr. Jekyll's like, I mean, I guess, yeah, that'd be fine. But like, he didn't even know that he was murdering women and stuff. So I don't know how you could. I guess back in the day, you could just charge people for that shit. But
well, yeah, I was like, you did you really need
Yeah.
that much of a?
But Jekyll's the one who did. Or, I mean, Hyde's the one who did all the bad stuff. So, for all those you don't know, Jekyll and Hyde is a Robert Louis Stevenson book. So I'm sure you've all heard of that one though, because that's pretty well known.
He made a potion.
Yeah, he drinks it,
and it brings out his inner darkest demons, and it physically manifests into a big creature.
Well, but the fun thing was, like he said, when I first took the potion, he was as big as me. Like it was just an evil man, I'll do some horrible shit, Yeah. But then I guess over the years he's gone kind of like more control and more crazy, and then he's like, and they even say like his he doesn't need the formula to turn into him anymore and all that stuff. So it's just metabolized. So whenever he gets scared, much like Hulk, he turns into Dr. Jekyll turns into Mr. Hyde. So now we have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and they're like, the next one, they're like, okay, we need to get our last guy. And our last guy, they're like, they just show up. I think that's the end of I think like halfway through this issue, they show up, they go to this, it's like a school for girls, right?
Yeah.
And the building, it looks like a regular school, except the middle of the school is like, there's like a hand that says like, Miss whatever preparatory school or whatever for girls. And then it's spanking a butt-shaped dome on the building. So you're like, okay, this is like a disciplinary school or some shit. And then we find out as they're walking into this place that like, oh, there's been some immaculate conceptions. And that's why they're kind of saying like, oh, like I want to send they're undercover. So Mina's like with Quartermain. Oh, and this is where he gets a little bit of racist stuff where like their servant is Nemo.
Yeah.
And he's like, bring our bags, servants. And Nemo's like, fuck you. And Quartermain is like, I don't want to be her husband either. It's fine. Well, just grit and bear it kind of thing. And so Mina's like, yeah, we're going to send our daughter here. And that's why we're here. We just want to make sure everything's okay with all these immaculate conception rumors.
And that's what they're hear about that. And they're curious because there was someone who went missing.
Yeah.
Is it something Griffin? What was the first name?
What is it? It's not Harley.
It was. I thought it was
Holly.
Holly.
Hawley. It's a weird name. But yeah, this guy went missing, and then recently there's been in this school some immaculate conceptions, and so this is also a very problematic scene in this book. It turns out I looked up the lady who runs this place is called Mrs. Coots. And apparently that is a Victorian era erotic novel character. So she's very like, I don't know what the books were about, but they must have been about, domination and spanking and weird shit. So,
yeah, she was very tight with her clothing and the way they drew her.
Very busty.
Very busty.
Yeah.
And then, like they showed, like they walked by one of the rooms and they're like, we take discipline here seriously.
Yeah.
And there's like,
a teacher a bare-ass girl bent over and a teacher's like hitting her butt like you shouldn't say that, should you? And she's like, no. And you're like, are they teaching them discipline or are they trying to do other weird shit in this? And apparently it's I mean there's actually, I think it's based on like an actual novel that she was in, like a school for girls or some shit like that. So and Alan Moore has dipped his toe into some weird like erotica writing as well, like after this. So he did a book called Lost Girls that was all about Peter Pan and that kind of stuff, but it's like, what if those characters had their sexual awakenings in the books? And it's weird stuff. Yeah. And it's all like an allegory for World War I and stuff. I'm like,
what? Okay.
So he tries to dip his toe into some weird areas. But this is definitely in that vein of like, huh? You're just kind of like, this is odd. And then, you hear about, oh, these girls have been visited in the night by a being, they're assuming like God or something. And, they've been blessed with these immaculate conceptions. And then they're like, oh, you can stay here tonight. And like, we'll show you dinner and all that stuff. And we'll show this and that. So they go to sleep. and then they wake up to like screams of fright and also other stuff, and they run into like the girls' room or the girls' wing where they're asleep in the dormitory, and one of them's just hovering in the air. She's got her nightgown on, but her like legs are up in the air, and I mean, it's obvious if you know what's going on.
Yeah, very, very awkward positioning.
Yeah, that she's
floating.
She's being lifted up, and someone's having their way with her, but he's invisible. So, you know, as the reader, we already knew this because we've seen the movie, but it's the Invisible Man is who they're trying to get. But apparently the Invisible Man's been raping.
Yeah, the Invisible Man in this, not
girls.
so heroic.
Yeah, he's been raping girls at this preparatory school, which is a weird disciplinary sexual preparatory school. It's odd. Once they kind of confront him and like Quartermain like grabs him and he's like, it's really hard to hold on to someone you can't see, and then like Nemo tries to grab his neck and strangle him. And I like how they did the action in this because it actually looks pretty much like he's struggling to fight someone, and like stuff's floating and, you know, in the panel and hitting people in the face. It's a really good job of representing that in a comic, which is hard to do kind of action like that where there's no movement on the page, so it's hard to show that exactly, but they did a good job.
And Wilhelmina she finds like a paint bucket or something.
Yeah, the place was like under construction, so there's like paint and things around. So she takes a paint bucket and throws it at him, and he's covered in paint. And then they're able to actually like get him. I don't remember if they like knock him out or if they just are able to get a hold of him. But either way, they get him finally, and they take him, and everybody's kind of like, "What? We thought there was like immaculate conception, and you know this was like a miracle or something." And it's like, no, this guy was just raping all these girls, and then you're part of the team, buddy. like and I'll say this, they definitely make him the most like wet works character, like the most, he's not a good guy, so they don't make him heroic in this, but they also don't make him like a good person either. So they don't try to like redeem him or some shit, because you're like, he's raping girls. He also is like the first people to like, or one of the first people to actually like murder, other than Hyde. I mean, Hyde, you know, you expect that because he's like a big monster, but like this dude just walks up behind people and slits their throats, and you know, so he's like the assassin in the team, which makes sense because he's the Invisible Man. Yeah, you can. But you know, they didn't go out of their way to say like this is a horrible thing, but they also didn't like try to redeem him or something. So, you know.
Yeah, like they weren't even saying like when to get him to work for the team, basically. It wasn't even like, hey, like, we'll pardon your obvious crimes. It was just like, hey, we know you turned yourself invisible and you probably don't want to be like this forever, so we'll help you find a cure for that. But yeah. That's it. That was all.
Well, I didn't even know they thought that was a crime. Like, they didn't say like, oh my, how dare you do this? Or they didn't condone, or they didn't say anything about him, you know, raping the girls.
I guess I took that as implying it was like, we're not gonna
we're wiping this under the rug or something, or we're not even saying it's
just like we're gonna help you get seen again, and you can't do anything like that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then
but also we're not gonna prosecute you or bring this up ever again. So yeah, like they you know, he's on the team now, so he's one of the Britain's finest, fighting for the crown or whatever, and that's pretty much where issue 2 ends. And so now finally the team is like together, and we're a team, and this is where like the story actually starts to really pick up, because for a while it was kind of like, okay, that's this person, that's this person, that's this person, and then now the team's all together. They kind of finally state what the big thing is, and what it is there's a stuff called cavorite, which was introduced to us by some guy from H.G. Wells' book about going to the moon. And apparently Britain has some kind of space force thing where they're like, we want to go to the moon, and we have this stuff called cavorite that's like a material we made to get there, and someone has stolen it, and they're in this what's the area called, like Limesgate or something
Limesgate,
like that?
Yeah. And so Mr. Bond is basically explained to them all, like, I brought all you extraordinary people together, so you can from Mr. M, who he will remain nameless. He's just Mr. M. And
and that's the thing, they also say like, oh, they think it's Mycroft Holmes because that makes sense, because it's M, so Mycroft is Sherlock Holmes' brother. in the books, and he's just like a government guy. I don't think he's anything that special in the books. I can't remember. But yeah, so they're like, oh, this Chinese guy named the Doctor, and apparently there's a lot of Chinese people in the Limesgate area, and they're like, oh, they've stolen it. We need to get it from them because they're gonna like attack. They're trying to build something. We don't know exactly what it is, but it's gonna be big.
Some kind of flying machine that's gonna like bomb the Britain, basically.
Yeah, but they don't know exactly all the details, but I don't think they know the details until later. But there's definitely like they're building something with this thing, and we got to know what it is. So the first mission as a team finally is like, okay, we gotta go to this area, and we gotta like somehow get into these like Asian markets and opium dens and stuff and find the information we need to find about where is this doctor at. I looked up later, the doctor is was originally supposed to be Fu Manchu, kind of like a big bad guy, like evil scientist, kind of catch-all from like the mid or like the early 1900s movies and stuff and pulp comics. But I think it hadn't been long enough for him to actually be called Fu Manchu. Yeah, he wasn't public domain. So they just did the Doctor.
The Doctor, yeah.
And so but he looks the same as Fu Manchu. He's got the mustache and he's got the that's what we're saying. Like, this is not the best representation of Asian people.
Yeah, because when they go to the Limesgate and it's like a little mini like Chinatown, like all of them are drawn very like stereotypical old-timey like 40s and 50s cartoons
for the most. Like a lot of the background characters were some of the ones that were like they're talking to looked fine. I was wondering if they did that like to be, because they also treat this like it is a book from back then. Like at the end of every issue there's like, my dear reader, what will happen next in this here, like he's acting like it is an actual periodical from back then. All the ads and stuff in these comics are all like for time period stuff. So it's kind of like he wanted it to be like this came out in the 1800s, so it would be racist if that was the case, but also kind of taking the piss out of it at the same time, and also kind of being like some stuff was good and some stuff wasn't. It's a weird like mix of all this stuff. There's a line that he rides, and I could see if you read this and you were Asian and you were like, what the fuck? Like, but if it's one of those books that you're like, I don't know if this could be done, for sure not nowadays, but and there's nothing, this book doesn't say anything. Like, there's no message in this book. It's just for funsies. So I could see why people might argue like maybe this one shouldn't be done or whatever. But Alan Moore, he's just trying to get his literary kicks or whatever. So but yeah, so they basically are trying to find where this doctor is and where like the Cavorite would be. And they go all around asking questions to people, and they finally find out, like they find these this guy, and I can't remember his name. Do you remember?
Kwong?
Mr. Kwong. Kwong Lee, that's what it is. And he's actually a character too from like a book. So it's like all these main characters, anybody they talk to are all from like books in general. Like, I don't know all of them, but Alan Moore reads a lot, I guess. So and he's like, hey, I can't tell you anything, but like, sir, there is a dragon sleeping under a bridge that's under the water. Yeah. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And they even say like, I don't want you to read my fortune or whatever, like, I don't want you, I'm not looking for a fortune cookie or whatever. Like, give me the information. And
that's right. This is then they're talking to him. They kind of split up into little groups, and this is Wilhelmina and Griffith, the Invisible Man, and he's like kind of like wrapped and painted himself up so he kind of looks like a person.
Yeah, the Invisible Man has to wear like grease paint all over his face, and they're like, oh my god. Like, they're like, you look kind of human but terrifyingly so.
Ghostly white and terrible.
And he's got to wear like glasses so that his eyes are like see-through.
Yeah.
So you would just see the back of his grease paint head,
it would be terrifying
whatever, if that was the case.
But yeah, he's like, she's trying to be like, Mina's trying to like kind of lightly more probe about it, and he's like, listen here, you Chinese guy, like, just give us the answer.
They call them Chinamen, I think, or they at least reference the people there to be Chinamen or whatever. Yeah. I'm like, all right, calm down. So I guess while Mina and the Invisible Man go talk to him, Quartermain and Hyde are going into this like opium den to get information, which is always a great idea to send an opium addict into an opium den. And like he's like, don't worry, I feel fine. Like I don't feel any kind of weakness towards this stuff anymore. So that was interesting that they would do that. But they're asking around, and I like this panel or this page because there's like they're asking and they're kind of being rude because they're like the white guys in this way. Tell us what we want to know, you know? Here. And like all these I guess they're supposed to be Chinese. All these Chinese guys behind them are like pulling knives out, and they have like all these evil looks on their fucking face because they're like about to murder them and steal all their shit because they're talking shit about Chinese people in their place. And then I think they say like the right thing or whatever.
Yeah, he's like, who are you looking for? And he says, my old friend. It's like Kwang Li or Ho Lang.
Yeah. And so he's like, oh, I wanted to buy opium from him, and he sold me heroin. He says he sold him tar, which I assume is heroin.
Yeah.
And like that's why my friend looks so sick, because also like Dr. Jekyll is like, oh man, like I'm freaking out because he's getting nervous and shit because he sees all these people kind of looking hostile towards them. And then that's when you see like all the knives and stuff come out because they're not buying their story.
Yeah.
And then Quartermain kind of pulls it all around. It's like, no, I meant like he sold me this, but actually like I was trying to buy this, and so I just want to give him, I want my money back for this stuff or whatever. And like, oh, okay, no worries. And then everybody puts their fucking knives away and shit in the panels. And then they open a door where like the dude is supposed to be, and they see like this guy who's supposed to be the doctor, and he's like writing. They say in caustic ink, which they said it's acid later on, but caustic is base, so I don't know. But it's some sort of acidic or base, super basic liquid that's like actually etching into their skin. So he's writing. This guy's in like a room full of fire, and he's hanging from his hands. He's a big fat guy, and on his stomach he's got like no clothes on except maybe a loincloth.
Yeah. And
on his stomach the guy's writing from his chest down to like his genitals, basically, in Chinese characters, but in this language or in this ink that's caustic and just burning into his skin. And he turns his head, the guy who's writing, and looks at Quartermain, and his fucking eye is like it's like a sideways cat eye. So I don't know what that is. A dragon's eye or something.
A goat eye?
A goat? Is that? I don't know.
I
no,
mean, goats are more round.
Yeah, goats are round or bulbous. This just looks evil. It looked like a snake's eye maybe or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was creepy as fuck. And then Quartermain's like, oh my god, like he actually gets freaked out. He's like, all right, well, see you guys later. And he like walks out, and he's like, oh shit. So they all meet back together, and the Quartermain's like, we saw the guy, he was fucking writing on another person with like, caustic ink, is super fucked up. And then Mina's like, well, we know where stuff is at least because it's in something under the bridge. And so they look into it, and they find out that there's like tunnels. I think they find blueprints or something for tunnels that were once a part of like, I guess they were going to build a tunnel under the river, and then they realized that's fucking stupid because it's 1800s and we can't do things like that right now. And so then like, we'll just build a bridge. So they had like half finished tunnels that ended up just being there left, and then they built a bridge on top of that. So in those tunnels, they realize, oh, that's where the doctor's like doing all this stuff, because they're like, with the Cavorite, he could be building something, but it would have to be in a. It's weird because like as a reader, you already figured this shit out, but the characters are like slow a little bit because they're like, but he would have to be building it somewhere very inconspicuous for a machine like that in the middle of. In the tunnels or whatever. You're like, yeah, dumb fuck, I got it. So. It was kind of funny. Some of the characters were like way behind on, at least from us as the reader. That's pretty much where the third issue ends. And the fourth issue, they're like, oh, we're gonna like go in those tunnels. So they find a way in, and I think it's just Hyde and who goes in? It's Hyde and the Invisible Man first.
Yeah,
and then no, it's Wilhelmina and Quartermain. They go first, and then Hyde and the Invisible Man follow. And it was very cool. This is like where like the action started to pick up because They get in there and they're like, I don't know if this is right because there's all this trash and shit blocking the entrance of this tunnel. Like, well, let's just keep walking. And eventually they like walk down some stairs and there's just like a Chinese guard walking by and they're like, oh, yep, we're definitely in the right area. And then they like go through some areas and they like walk into a room that's a big glass room so you can see like the river from the bottom. And you're like, oh, they're going to use that later on, obviously. And then, and then they finally find the big room where like what's going on. You get to see it finally. And what it is cavorite is this stuff that basically is weightless and but not it's weightless. It can, I guess, when exposed to air, because it can keep it in like a chamber and it's fine. But when it's exposed to, the atmosphere, it just floats, and it like will float anything apparently because it's about to float a giant warship that can fly.
Yeah, it looks kind of like a
looks like a battleship.
Yeah,
but like a submarine battleship kind of from like the, like I don't know, a very early prototype submarine. But in the sky is what they kind of have an idea.
And they have like Chinese influence on it because there's like some dragons like kind of like carved into it. It's cool. It's really cool looking.
Yeah, the design for all this stuff was really cool. It's very steampunk, very 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 steampunk, which was always fun because it's like a good time period to have some fun design influences. And they're like, oh my god, that's what they're using it for, and they kind of. They're like, oh shit, like that's what we need now is like now we know we have to take this down and it's gonna bomb. They're just gonna bomb all of London and England and all that shit. So well, we can't let this happen. And then like you see behind him there's like a dude that was like Wilhelmina and Quartermain. You see there's a dude and he's like walk in and he sees him and he's like, what the fuck? It's like a Chinese guy, so like he's obviously on the bad guy's side or whatever, and he walks up behind him and they're like, oh hey, and then they're like, we got to do something, and Quartermain has his elephant gun that he brought with him, but it's like wrapped up. It's like, why the fuck didn't you unwrap your gun if you're bringing it with you? And it also only does one shot because it's like a giant elephant gun.
Yeah.
So he's like, it just makes me feel better and safer. And so they're about to like fight this guy, and then all of a sudden his throat gets slit because the Invisible Man came in and just slit his throat. And he's like, hey everybody, I'm here to save you and also like murder fuckers. And they're like, okay, thanks. and then they hear like a lot of commotion going on. They're like, something's going on. And we find out that Hyde has been found or whatever, and he's just like creating a distraction, and he's like murdering people and like killing everybody, and it's pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah, he was just like literally ripping guys in half,
ripping people in half. Yeah, like this book is pretty violent. I mean, it's not like gory, but definitely like Hyde's taking bites of people's arms and just ripping bodies in half and crazy shit.
This part actually has my favorite line in the whole thing, because so that's happening, and then they get in, they sneak in. He puts on like the Chinaman guards robes, the
garb or whatever.
The garb that he was wearing. He's like, I'll kind of like blend in somehow, because he wasn't wearing a mask.
Yeah,
but that's why I was like, why even put it on?
I thought it was like, I'm the white guy in the Chinese guard.
It was almost like that James Bond.
Yes. Oh man, don't even bring up No One Lives Forever. Or no, You Only Live Twice. Don't watch that one, guys.
Anyway, so they get up and they get the Cavorite, and they're making their way back, and Quartermain's like, it's okay, it's going to be a piece of cake getting out of here. It's going to be, because Hyde has like gotten all the bad guys out of the way, and he's basically paved our way with roses. Yeah. And they like turn the corner and like see like the blood and guts, and Mina's like, not quite roses, but it's the same color, I guess.
Yeah. It's not roses, but and there's just like a pile of bodies, so it's like we can't even get through this area because it's blocked off by dead bodies. And so they're like, shit, what are we gonna do? And they go hide in that room with the glass ceiling. They all get locked. They lock themselves in there, and then the people are like, the Chinese guards are like hitting the door, and they're like, oh shit, like we're gonna run out. And he's like, why don't you just shoot the glass? Shoot the glass, and then we'll just we'll like, I guess the bottom of the capsule that the Cavorite is in can move open. So if they move it open, it will float. So they do that when they shoot the glass, and then everybody like hangs on to Mr. Hyde, and they all fly up, and then they continue to rise. They show
they go through the water, and now they're up in the air,
and then they're like, "Oh, close it!" And then like they get it closed, but it's a little too late. They're already like maybe like 50 feet in the air, and then they fall back into the water. But the Nautilus is there, and that's where you were saying, you get to see the actual squid arms of the Nautilus like move and pick up the people and then put them back in the sub.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was cool that it actually like is for a reason.
Yeah, well, they weren't. It wasn't just like decorative.
Aesthetics or whatever. Yeah. So then that's pretty much the end of number 5.
The only thing in this is that Nemo makes a good point. Like once they all get back together, he's like, something else is at play here. I don't trust Mr. Bond. Like that's a cool thing. Where we're really starting to get more of Nemo's characters, because Nemo is obviously like paying attention to everything, and he's like putting pieces together kind of faster, I think, than everybody else. And he's like,
yeah, because he's also in the background. He's just basically watching everybody do stuff.
Yeah.
And while like we all know he's like a badass pirate and whatnot, he's like, he's able to like see everybody kind of for who they are. So
yeah.
And then we get like the beginning of chapter 6 of this, or issue 6 was, you see kind of who, I guess it actually reveals who the bad guy, the main bad guy is at the end of 5.
Yeah, they give Bond the Cavorite.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I'm going to take it to Mr. M. You guys stay here, and, you guys are cool.
Yeah.
I'll be back with more missions.
And Invisible Man follows him.
Yeah.
And so Bond goes and he takes it to, and Invisible Man doesn't even know who it is, but he's like, he said his name was Moriarty or something, but yeah, it ends up is Moriarty, who's the bad guy from the Sherlock Holmes novel. So you're like, oh shit, it's that guy.
So yeah, he survived somehow.
Yeah, and so I didn't even know he was supposed to be dead, but we knew Sherlock Holmes was dead because they mentioned that earlier on.
Yeah.
So then the issue starts. Issue 6 starts with, like what happened between Sherlock Holmes and him, and I guess this is actually from a book where like, I don't know about him living, but Sherlock Holmes, and him are on like a cliff by a waterfall, and they're fighting. It's very like small, and they're doing their like, well, sir, if you were going to kill me, I'm going to go out as a gentleman, and I'm going to write a note and leave it here. Like,
yeah, basically like, I'm going to let the world know what happened here. And so he writes it out. He's like, hold on, we're not going to fight yet. And so Sherlock writes it out, and he's like, puts it and closes the book. He's like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, and then they fight, and then Moriarty like loses his footing and is like thrown over Sherlock Holmes' shoulder, and he's thrown down into the waterfall. I assume like hundreds of feet, because I mean he looked pretty broken. They show him and he's like broken.
He's mangled.
Yeah. And so he falls, and then like it turns out Mr. Bond was down there, and he's like, sir, I'll save you. And he's like a young Mr. Bond, which was fun. They give him like a different look for their age and everything.
Yeah.
And so they pull him out of the water, and then they're like, Bond is like, oh, I'll take care of him, sir. Because they see Sherlock climbing a cliff like out of there, and he's like, just push some boulders all over him or whatever. He's like, okay, so like make it look like it's a rock fall or something, and that's how I guess Sherlock Holmes died. So I don't know if that's how it happens in the books. I don't even know if he dies in the books. I haven't read all that shit, but in this, that's how it happens. So we find out what really happened. It's not even for Britain why the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen are together. It's actually for Moriarty to get the Cavorite so he can start his own flying ship and like bomb the Asian district, or like the poor district of London. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or I don't know where it is. I guess it's London where they're at. But yeah, like it was weird. They're like, okay, we're going to blow up Limesgate and like, a couple other areas around there. And then like, then I'll be like the dominant power in the skies, and I can like kind of make countries do what I want. And so then when that's kind of revealed, the Invisible Man goes back and is like, oh my God, guys, this is what's going on. Then everybody kind of knows, oh, okay. Like that's the actual plan. We're dumb. We followed Bond for no reason. And now we gotta fight this guy, Moriarty. I guess they find out where his craft is supposed to, come from. And they're like, it's funny because Nemo's like, I have something. Because like they're like, how can we fly? Because this is before flight, so like no one knows how to get to him once he's in the sky. And Nemo's like, I have something, and he pulls out like a dirigible, like a a hot air balloon, basically. And he's like, I borrowed it from someone, or, you know, like he stole it obviously from like pirating, and I think it might be supposed to be like the 180 or the around the world in 80 days.
He said it's called Victoria, and I felt like I knew the name. I was like, that sounds familiar.
I didn't look that up, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's referencing is around the world in 80 days.
This is a fun part because this is where they're kind of they're getting the plan together of how they're gonna like go in and do this, and like you get that little bit more of like character as far as like, they're kind of arguing about like trust and like who, because like they didn't realize the Visible Man, like when they realized he was gone, they thought maybe he betrayed them
right
at first, and so they were arguing about trust, and then they came back and they're like, oh, are we believing that this is what's going on? And Nemo's like, well, Mr. Bond definitely, I've never trusted him from the beginning, and like Quartermain and Mina kind of get into it, and so they're like, and they separate for a minute, and so Quartermain's like helping Nemo with the hot air balloon, and he's like, there's the specific line is like, oh, that's why they picked Sean Connery, I feel like, for this.
Yeah, he's like, damn women.
Yeah, he's like, I did everything I could not to hold back giving her a good slapping.
Yeah.
Or a jolly good smack, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Oh,
like,
man.
All right, then.
Sometimes a woman needs a good slap.
And Nemo's like, well, you realize that, so yeah, that's what he was saying to that. And right before that, Mina is talking with, I think,
Dr. Jekyll.
I think he's Jekyll. You're right.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, the reason, I don't know if you've noticed, but the reason that, he gets more frustrated is because he obviously has like feelings for you. He's been harboring now. So
yeah. So you see like, oh, there's a little bit of a romance budding, but yeah. So now they're ready to go. So Moriarty's ship is already up in the air and it's starting to like shoot the city. It actually does shoot the city a bit. You see like places are on fire and blowing up. So they take their balloon up there. They board the ship. They pretty much just start going crazy and fighting everybody. And like, Jekyll hulks out in the hide.
Yeah, they're all fighting. And Nemo has the coolest part because there's like a bunch of guys coming at him. And Nemo's like, I've got this. And he pulls out this like really big handgun. That's like a machine.
No. It was like a machine gun. Like about like an old crank one, like a Gatling gun, but like an original one.
But it was like smaller. So it
was a handheld Gatling gun, I guess. And it shot harpoons though.
Yeah.
It wasn't bullets. I don't even know how that fucking works. But it shoots harpoons somehow, like little mini.
It was really cool.
It was cool. He got one and Quartermain got one.
Yeah.
And then
Nemo became the most badass in the fight scene for sure.
That's like when he actually like kind of really, you're like, I really like him. He's awesome. So Quartermain and Moriarty are fighting, and they're all right next to where the Cavorite. Wow.
I was like, where you go? I feel like I know where you're going.
They're right next to where the Cavorite engine is, and so
Mina's there with him, but like Mina has to fight a guard or something.
Yeah. And so, like, Quartermain is able to get his hands on the Cavorite, and they, like, pull it out, and then the ship starts to fall. And then, before the ship starts to fall, Moriarty grabs the Cavorite as it's, like, flying away. And it, like, flies up, and Moriarty just goes with it. He, like, jumps on it, and then he's, like, hundreds of feet in the air already. So he's like, I don't want to let go, but he's just going into space. And I like how they said it. They said, he's falling into the sky, which I thought was a fun way of explaining that.
Yeah.
But,
I guess he didn't know to...
he was already 100 feet in the air, and he jumped on it kind of out of instinct. So it's just kind of a fun way to die.
Yeah.
He just floats into space or whatever, too high to, he's already too high to not to live if he fell. So either way, he was going to die. And then the ship starts to fall. Everybody's like, and then they get on the balloon. I don't know where the ship crashed. They didn't really say like, oh, it missed the city by a little bit, or if it crashed in the city.
Yeah, they didn't really go.
But they're like, whoa, thank God we saved England, and then it's pretty much just like, ha, here. And we find out that like Mycroft Holmes is the new director of MI5, and we find out like basically what London did, or what England did, their government, was they took Moriarty, and they're like, they made him Sherlock Holmes' villain. They're like, we want you to be the head of our Secret Service, and you're going to be like Sherlock Holmes' foil, I guess, to keep him in check. But then he ended up liking being the foil and being the bad guy. So it was like, I'm good, but I'm also horrible. Like, it's kind of like real spies and shit. You know, they'll kill this person and that person, or not this person because he gives them oil or whatever. You know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so it was kind of interesting. But yeah, they end, and then right as everything's ending, all of a sudden you see like shit falling out of the sky. There's all these big asteroids or something falling into the sky, and they're like, well, here's your next mission, you know? And so then it leaves it kind of like hanging like that. I looked into it and I forgot what happens in the second volume, and basically they fight Martians or something. So that was coming from those things. Wow. So, okay. Yeah, very interesting story, and I don't know, it was fun. It was fun, but it was also like a weird mix of characters and everything, and also like themes and whatnot. So, yeah, you got anything else to?
No, not particularly. Yeah, like you said, it was fun. I feel like some of the characters got a good fleshing out. Some of them,
yeah. I thought Mina. I think we were talking about this. Mina, like in the movie, in the movie she even in this, she's got a scarf around her neck the whole time, and you're like, oh, because she got bit by Dracula, because you know,
she gets bit by Dracula.
Yeah, story. And then, so is she a vampire or what? You know, we don't know.
The one thing every time it's brought up of like something happened in her past, they're like, oh, it was really bad. Like there was some really gory things that happened, and I guess that's ultimately what led to her divorcing Harker, and that's why she took her name. Also, right. So it wouldn't be out there, you know, because that name, I guess the Harker name would be notorious with the Dracula story.
Yeah.
So so I'm expecting a big payoff, at least in the last
fight scene,
fight.
I was too, because also in the movie she does vamp out or whatever. So I thought, oh, she's gonna do that in this. I couldn't remember if she did or not, and then she doesn't. And it was weird because they like made her character strong at some points and then didn't in other points. And I'm like, that's weird. You could have made her like full circle this storyline where she's like strong, and they're like, why is she here? She seems in charge, but why?
Yeah.
Why would you have a woman lead the team or whatever? And then they could have showed her vamp out and they'd be like, oh, that's why.
That's why. She's So because when I was looking at it, we were talking about like looking at it, it's like all the literary coming together, almost like Avengers style. It's like, oh, she's kind of like the Captain America of the group, or at least the leaderish character of the group. But I didn't understand, at least in this first volume, they don't really give her
what's her real role,
the reason for being either the leader of the group. Like, what makes her extraordinary?
Right.
Like they don't have that at all.
Well, remember, it's called the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen plus Lady. That's, I guess, plus
that is the title.
lady.
I forgot. Yeah. But yeah,
that's horrible. But like I said, she is like badass and takes care of herself.
Yeah, like she fights.
So you think she does have some kind of power or something, because she does take care of herself quite good in other areas, but they didn't like finish it or something. I don't know. Maybe volume 2 takes care of that, but I don't know.
A little more, yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe we'll read that one a little bit later. But
we're not getting a second movie. So.
Yeah, we're not getting a second movie for sure. So yeah, what would you give this one then, Joe?
You know, I liked it. Like you said, the art was fantastic.
Yeah,
and
that's actually the shining piece of this book. Because I mean, while Alan Moore's writing is great as always, there's no like point to this book other than him having fun with like childhood characters maybe that he likes. So it's not like Watchmen where it's like, holy shit, he's got like commentary. I mean, there is commentary on British politics of that time and everything, but this just seemed more like he's having fun.
He's fun writing like a period style piece of work.
More, and like there's a little bit of that quippy like, hey, I'm from the future, so I know this is fucked up, but at the same time, I'm going to write fucked up shit in this book to fit the time period and everything. And so, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't like as, you know, Alan Moore-ish as other works, or like groundbreaking, or, you know, having something to say, you know, as other books. So, so what would you give it?
I'm going to say 6.
6? I'm going to give it a 6 too. It wasn't like amazing. I think the art actually bumps this up from a 5 to a 6.
I agree.
Because the art was fantastic. So Kevin O'Neill, thumbs up. 2 thumbs up from our podcast. But yeah, that's pretty much like, it's a fun read. It was definitely worth reading. You should pick it up if you have read other stuff that, you know, once you get past the groundbreaking books that we've read and that we're going to read, pick this one up. You know, if you've read Alan Moore's Watchmen and From Hell and some other ones, you're like, okay, what else did he write? You're like, oh yeah, this is a good story too. Like we said, I don't think this could be written nowadays though. Or if it was, it's under his own imprint, and you know,
and like so that, and it has that going for it because this is definitely something different that you're not going to get.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So, on that note, I guess if you guys have any comments or questions or suggestions, you can email us at Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, all one word, at gmail.com.
Don't forget to write about what your favorite parts or what stuff you might like us to read in our comments on our Twitter or Instagram. And if you're following us, we've got a lot of good material and content and more contests coming.
Yep. All right. Well, then I'll see you later.
Catch you on the next one.
Bye. Well, folks, hope you enjoyed that episode.
If you did and you'd like to follow us on social media, our Facebook is Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, and our Instagram is @Planes, Trains, and Comic Books, all one word.
And be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more recommendations to add to your weekly pull list.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.